So I hope everyone's having a good week. It's been a busy week. I know that for me. Time is flying right by, right past us. I'm having a hard time finding my right screen here. There we go. Okay. So in a second, you should see, I'll start off with just kind of looking and going over the assignment coming up. So I've gotten some emails, just some questions, seeking clarification. So I shared a copy or the syllabus and scrolled over to um, let me get down to where I wanted to be. Thought I already had it. Norm reference assignments coming up. So, just a couple questions I want to clarify in case anybody hasn't asked or has it on their mind. I've had a couple questions already come forward on it. Do I have to use the same student due to circumstances? No, you don't. You can use a different case study student for this assignment. That's acceptable. Not a problem. Okay, so I know one or two of you maybe ran into some issues, maybe with testing, whatever it may be. So if you need to use a different student, it's perfectly acceptable. Okay. Um, Next thing is a little bit about the format. I'll show you the format. It's in the core shell. I'm going to show you that this evening as well. Talk a little bit about it. Two or one new thing this week that we didn't have last week, and it will talk about it in the rubric when we get down through here, is comparing your student um, results to their peers. That's what a norm reference does. It compares it to peers of the same age in a norm group. And it specifically talks about using a bell curve. Okay, so that's one of the new things we're going to add into the report this time is a bell curve. I have a template that you can use. You can actually go in and put your scores. It will create a bar graph on the bell curve. You can copy it, drop it in your report. Excuse me, I'm going to shut my door here. And you can drop it right in your report. It's an editable, it's a Google form, and I will show you where to find that in the course shell as well. So, very helpful tool. Okay. The report layout itself is pretty much the same sections. We're going to have our identifying information section. If you are using the same case study student, if it's the same one, you can literally take your identifying information, or I'm sorry, your background information, and copy it and drop it right over into this report. You won't need to redo it if it is the same student. Okay, so just remember that. If you're using a different case study student, you'll have to create this new section here, basically on a little bit about their disability, their background, a little bit about teacher observation, family information. Okay, test results in interpretation. You did this last week. You're going to put some of your raw data in tables, charts, and graphs. Okay, you can pull that off of the reports. You'll see some of the raw scores. You're going to show that just like you did last week in some tables, charts, and graphs. The new item is we're going to explain the results and your case study student performance in comparison to their peers using a bell curve. So I will show you where to find that bell curve tool that you can use. And you literally you can just put your scores in and then drop it in, and it will give you an example to reference on how your student did compared to their norm group using that bell curve. Okay, so that's one that on this particular assignment, a lot of students tend to forget about putting that in. So that one item, guys, I want to make sure you're aware that one item alone is worth 25 points on that assignment. So don't overlook that. Then you will just support any conclusions you came up with using data and then highlight what you feel like are strengths of the students and also some weaknesses. When we're doing this report, some of the information that you have from your case study student, there'll be a lot of data in there. You won't need to pull all of it. I always say identify what you feel like are 2 to 3 weak areas displayed by the scores in that report that you're using. Okay, so Erica, your student may have had some low scores in reading comprehension, reading fluency, and then math calculations. Those might be the three lowest ones. Those would be the ones I would focus on for this norm reference report as far as their areas of weakness, and just kind of focus on that and build it from there, your report around that. The next section you'll have is summary and conclusion. Okay, just basically tie any key findings that you discovered with the background of the student, and then just kind of give a brief summary of their overall performance on this particular assessment. Okay, then you're going to make recommendations for any instructional planning. If you feel like you need to drop content back, any modifications that you would recommend, you're going to talk about it in the recommendation section. All right. Also with this, remember, we're going to develop the lesson plan based off the data from this report only. Okay, you did it for the informal. We're going to turn around and develop a lesson plan using the data from the norm reference assessment. Okay, a lot of similarities to the report you did last week or 2 weeks ago, other than we're going to add the bell curve in. All right. So I'm going to get off of that page and I'm going to go down to my resources page. The bell curve template is here in the SPED 805 resources. It'll say test overview bell curve document. Okay, it's literally a Google tool I used a lot of times when I'm building my comprehensive reports after I've tested a student. So you can see the bell curve here. It shows standard score, scaled score, and also percentile rank. You will see their standard score, 100, is right in the middle. Okay. Here you can actually edit this document. You could put the test you're going to put in there. You could put reading comprehension. Okay. And if your student's percentile, their score was standard scores of 45, put that in there and it put it right here. Or if it was a 70, okay, the bar graph will automatically populate for that. Okay, it's in the red. Number of matrices, they might have scored a 130. Okay, you can see it populated all the way on the bar graph, green all the way out. Okay, oral reading, we'll say their oral reading, we'll just say was pretty low as well. It was a 81. Okay, I'm going to show it. So it color codes it. Anything in red, those are the red flags you heard me talk about. Those are areas we definitely need to pay attention to, especially if we tested a kiddo. If it's in the yellow, that tends to show us low average. It's kind of that sending up a yield sign, yellow, kind of giving us some indicators that we need to look at that. If it's green, in the green, anything above 85, that's what we really like to see. Okay. When I use this tool, I will have subtest scores. I may have 20 of them listed here. And then I go in and literally do a copy of this and then paste it right into my document. That's all you got to do. Okay. This tool's on there. You can edit it and put your information in. Okay. Any questions on that? No? All right. I'm going to do get off of this one. And I'm going to go down to sample reports. I have a sample or an example of the norm reference in here so you can kind of see the format of it, what it looks like. Okay, they put an abstract in, just kind of an overview. Here's identifying information. Okay, they met all the requirements according to the rubric. They named the norm reference assessment. It was a Woodcock-Johnson test of achievement. The date the test was administered. This is from several years ago. Okay, then they go into the background information on the student, just like you did 2 weeks ago. G. Johnson, 15 years old, been diagnosed with ADD. Okay, he's a sophomore in high school, transitioned to alternative school. little bit about observation, and a little bit about their on this. If you don't have any family information, or if it's not available, simply just put there is no pertinent family information for G. Johnson. Here's where we get into the test results and interpretation section. We're explaining the results. We talked about they put the grade expectancy scores. You can put their standard scores, whatever you want to do. Here is the data charts that they used. Okay. And then we get on down, they explain some more. This was before, got to remember, this report, this example was before I had the bell curve template that I just showed you. And so the student literally, they did it with tools in Microsoft Word. You can see they did their lines here and they identified it and then they wrote it in. So that's how they made the requirement. That was before we had the temp of the Google tool. Okay. Summary and conclusion section. And then any recommendation, much like you did before. Okay. So really not anything tremendously different than what we did before. They included their lesson plan, even if it is the same case study student, you still add this in and you would write it in Woodcock Johnson, just like this student did. All right. And that's all you gotta do. Okay. It's the assessment report, the lesson plan goes with it. Okay. So you'd want to include the lesson plan after the permission form. In question on the example that I have provided in the course shell. Any example or a question on the bell curve tool makes it so much easier than having to draw it like this student did back in the day before I had that resource. In question on that before I kind of roll into the next thing I wanted to, if you remember, this is kind of where things overlap a little bit between two assignments. Norm reference, before I move on, everyone good? Remember, if you are having, go ahead.
How many pages in total are we talking? I mean, I know you said 3 to 5, right? And that's without all
Yeah,
the
it's
charts
like
and
a
all
three
the
to
extra
five
stuff.
by the time you get, yeah, 3 to 5 by the time you get all your information in it. Yep.
And then we put all our charts and our abstracts
Add
and
your
all that
charts
stuff,
in.
and then
Yeah,
we're good to go.
exactly. Yeah. And then the lesson
Okay.
plan. Okay.
All right. Thank
Um,
you.
you're welcome. If you had trouble uh, getting norm reference data simply due to the fact that you didn't have a person that you could go to in your district to help you with that, as far as a qualified examiner, a school psych, or psychometrist, remember, this is another option for you. You can go in and review this testing video. It's 25 to 30 minutes, administering the WJ4 cognitive. Then, if you are using the video, remember the comprehensive report for it is in week. Let me get back up here to it. You click on week 4 and 5. Remember, 4 and 5 is combined. It will be the last document before you get to the week 6 folder. The comprehensive report has all the data that you would need if you are using the testing video that I provided for this assignment. Okay. If you're not using the video, you don't even need to worry about this document here. Okay. If you are, remember the first half of this comprehensive report is all written narrative. The second half of it, you will see, is all the statistical information, which I'll get there eventually. I'm scrolling right now. Right here. This is where you'll find all your data. If you're using this, again, pick out 2 to 3 areas that are low. And if you look at the classification column here, it will tell you visualization was low. Okay, you can go down. Reading recall was low. Okay, so there's two right there you can pick out easily. Number of matrices was low average, getting kind of down on that lower tier. So there's three right there. Okay, if you're using this. All right, just want to make sure you guys knew where to find it and remind you it was there. Any questions on norm reference before I switch gears and start talking about CBM a little bit, a few minutes? We'll spend just a few minutes to get you thinking about it. Okay, I'm going to do a stop share on that. So, this is the point when we actually are going to talk about two different assignments in the same given week. This is kind of where the overlap occurs. After you submit the norm reference on Sunday evening, we're going to start getting into CBMs. CBMs basically is kind of a glorified informal assessment. CBMs are something that you can give multiple times to students to track their progress over the course of a semester or a year. We're just going to do it condensed into this 8-week class. So on CBM assessments, we're going to ask you to get 4 to 6, between 4 and 6 data points. So that means that you would have to administer a CBM probe 4 to 6 times. So that's kind of why I'm going ahead and talking about this tonight, so you can start thinking about it and kind of stretch it out over the next couple of weeks so you don't have to just try to jam it all in 2 days. Okay. CBM probes. There is a resource out there on the web that's free. I always recommend that students use it. It's called easycbm.com. Easycbm.com. You can go to it, it's free. It will give you a grade level you can select. You can select what content area, and then you can select what skill level that you want to generate a CBM probe. Probe is another term or name that we use for assessment. The probe means we're going to give it multiple times. On that probe, you can go in on each time you administer it and kind of shift or maneuver your questions around so they're not in the exact same order. That way the student's not memorizing it, okay? The order of the questions, okay? But you want to keep the content consistent as far as difficulty level, okay? Administer that over 4 to 6 weeks. Um, you can do a probe over any content, subject area, or skill. Okay, they can be measured. Okay, oftentimes I see it done with reading and math. Those are the two most common areas, whether it's reading fluency, reading comprehension, math facts fluency. Okay, the probes usually can be administered anywhere between 1 and 2 minutes. They're very easy and short to administer as far as the amount of time it takes. Okay, so I would encourage you in the next day or two to go to that website and think about, okay, what type of probe would I want to give to my case study student? Do I want to do it on math? Do I want to do it on reading comprehension? Once you decide you want to keep it consistent, we don't want to change it every time as far as math one, reading the next, spelling the next. That's not going to help us. We want to do it multiple times over the same skill, so we can see if the student is progressing, if their score is increasing or improving. Okay, so again, after tonight, I encourage you guys, look at that, get an idea. Yes, you can use letter names and sounds as probe. I saw that in the chat box. Okay, that is, yeah, you can do that. Now, also something that we're going, and I'll get into it more next week. I'm not going to get really deep into it now because I know you're working on norm reference and I don't want to confuse you. I'm just going to kind of mention this and then I'll get in depth next week on it. when we administer these probes, we're going to go in and we're going to plot those in our report that we build. And so you'll establish a baseline when we do it. And so once that baseline is established and we administer that probe more times, if we see the scores drop, that tells us we need to do an intervention. And once we do the intervention and then turn around and re-administer that probe, and we see the scores are continuing to drop, that's a red flag. That's telling us that the content of that material within your probe is well above their ability level. Tells you need to drop it back. But we'll talk about a baseline, intervention line, and an aim line. Those will be three things that we're going to focus on next week when we start talking about CBMs and how to track and monitor their data and their progress. Just remember, this is a short, condensed version of working with CBMs and how to plot that. Most of the time, you want to do it again over the course of a semester or even throughout the year so you have multiple data points. It helps give you a visual on, we hope the scores are going in an upward trajectory. We want to see that. We don't want to see them go up and then down and drop. That tells us, hey, we got to do either an intervention or the content's too difficult. Okay, so it's a good visual for you as a resource teacher to help kind of monitor and track the data. It gives you a good visual representation to use. It's quite evident when you see those data plots if interventions or changes need to be made. Okay, so we'll really dive into that next week when we're on there. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out. We will talk about those. Will be three new things that you're going to learn about: baseline, intervention line, and an aim line, and then the probe. So for sure, try to make sure you have your probe determined before we meet next Wednesday. I would go ahead and start looking at that. If you find one you're comfortable with, I would go ahead and administer it once, maybe even twice before we meet next Wednesday if you can. Because after you submit your norm referenced assessment Sunday, it's quick. You'll have about a 2 week window to collect your data points, write your CBM report, turn it in on a Sunday, and then turn right around and make your mock IEP video. And then on that Wednesday, that video or your final is due. Okay, so quick. That's why I'm encouraging you now to start thinking about it, pick you out a probe, and maybe go ahead and start administering those just to go ahead and get a jump start on it. Okay, because it will move fast. And then you got to think about we got a holiday in there too in the mix, Thanksgiving. Okay. There was a question in the chat box. Can I use data from the beginning of the school year? Yes, you can. One thing I always say when graduate students ask me that is, yeah, as long as it's current school year data. I don't want you to go back and pull data from last year or the year before. I want it to be relevant and current to this school year. So yes, if it is from this school year and some of your students have already been doing CBMs, your case study, you can pull that data and use it. So if that's the case, you got a jump start right there. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, I just kind of wanted to touch on that to get you to start thinking about it and then kind of go over the format on the norm reference and see if everyone was clear on what we're going to be looking for on the norm reference assessment. Any questions anyone wants to ask before we go? No?
Just to
Next week?
clarify,
Yeah, go
we
ahead.
can use FastBridge as our norm or as our
You can. I've allowed them to
okay.
do it. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
just wanted to make sure on that.
Yep. Next Wednesday, I'll talk more about the CBMs. I'll go over slide decks that pertain to the CBMs, and then I will also show you the chart, which will be a new item in the CBM report. It's a chart on how to plot the data and give you some guidance on that. So that's kind of what we'll look at next Wednesday on Zoom. All right. Any questions before we go? Everyone good? Everyone feel good about this norm reference? Since that's coming up due, everyone feel good and have all your information. Okay. If you have questions between now and then, please email. Let me know. I'll get to you that day. Again, check them early in the morning and that evening, afternoon. And before we go, if you have not done so, please make sure you got your name in the chat box so I can get your points for you. Okay? Everyone good? All right. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. We'll see you. Caitlin's got a helper there.